And we're live. Thank you, everybody, for joining us yet again. We appreciate it. We're going to cut right to the chase. Obviously, if you've been following along, you know what we're about and what we're doing. Our whole goal is to just bring mental health awareness into every sector of people's lives. And we're very, very delighted this week to have teachers from not just around the country, but we've actually got some from different parts of the globe. So we're super excited about that. We'll do introductions here and go around. Jesse, thank you for joining me yet again today. It's always good to see you.
It's good to see you too, Paul. Pretty excited about today. It's not often that we get to do things, especially from a global perspective. We're going to get some of that today. And moreover, we keep highlighting the rock stars that have come through from this pandemic, and absolutely its teachers. So we're going to get into that. I'm excited. But so our viewers can understand better about each of you, I'd like to each of you go around the room and tell us a little bit about yourselves, maybe what you teach, where you're from, maybe how long you've been in the profession. And we can start with Patty.
Hi, everybody. I live in Walpole. I teach in Walpole, Massachusetts, work in Walpole, Massachusetts. I'm a special education coordinator, K through 5, at 2 different elementary schools. So we're dealing with a lot with all the elementary special education students and figuring out what they're all about. I've been in the profession for 26 years, almost 27 years, doing a variety of different things from teaching, assistant principal, and now the special ed coordinator.
Thank you, Patty. I appreciate it. Andrew, let's go with you next, please.
Hey, I'm Andrew DeCoster. I teach high school math in Roanoke, Virginia, and I've been working in schools about 10 years now.
Love it. Thank you, Andrew. Jenna?
I'm Jana DeCoster, Andrew's sister. I am in my 8th year teaching. The first 7 years I was in Alexandria, Virginia, and this past year I've been in New Orleans. So that was my first year teaching in New Orleans.
Thank you.
And last but not least.
Hi, I'm Sheila. I'm an art teacher. I've been teaching for almost 30 years. And for the past 10 years, I've been teaching overseas in Tunisia and North Africa, Shanghai, China, and now I'm currently in Saigon, Vietnam. And I've taught in the United States as well. I grew up as an Air Force brat, so coming back overseas was something I was very compelled to do.
Thank you, Sheila, for all of your service and for your families and for all of you. We really appreciate it. I can tell you just real quick, there are 2 teachers that stand out for me that absolutely not only shaped my life, but probably saved my life and had no idea. And so I'm just really, really grateful for your profession and what that means. But I'm super fascinated by how we have been adjusting, because school for many, many kids is a safe haven, and it's a true getaway from their world, which isn't always a great place to be. And so I'm just curious first about you all as teachers. How have you found this time in adjusting from going from classrooms to now virtual, having to do everything online? How have you individually been dealing with that?
Is there any, I'll say something, I guess, right now, if that's okay.
Yeah, Sheila, just free flow.
Yeah, okay, just pipe in. It was difficult because I was in quarantine for 2 weeks, and Vietnam and Asia started this whole Corona thing a lot earlier than in the States. So on March 15th, I was put into quarantine for 2 weeks, and that meant not leaving my apartment, nothing. And during that time, I felt frustrated because my teacher colleagues were still at school. So I had to adjust to being at home a lot earlier. But anyway, we started to go online 13 weeks ago. So we've been doing it a really long time. And it was a matter of me as an art teacher trying to figure out what the kids had at home that I could use in my home, and using my iPad and putting it on my ironing board and trying to figure out how to share my instructional videos because I wanted my art classes to go on as best as possible. We also incorporated Google Meets very early on and tried to get as many kids to come on at least in each grade once a week for about an hour. And a lot of those kids, they weren't really interested in doing the art, but they were interested in seeing each other and connecting and waving and putting some words in the chat box. And grades 1 through 5, a lot of them, some of them not English speakers also. So it was a real challenge from the language point of view, not being there to guide them with their work and not being able to see if they were really actually doing any work, but just to be there as a connection for the kids to socially, emotionally see their teachers, knowing that we're not that far away, and see some of their friends. I thought that was the most important part of the 13 weeks that we had online. And we actually went back this week for the first time. So that was a completely different segue from being online for so long, getting into that groove, and now being back in person again, which it's a mind blower. It's completely different than it was originally because we've got social distancing. Everyone has to wear a mask. We're sanitizing our hands all the time, and we have to disinfect all the things that they touch, and telling kids that they can't touch each other and that you can't run around on the playground. It's very hot here as well. So the Vietnamese government says the air conditioning can't be lower than the equivalent of 80 degrees Fahrenheit in the classroom, and then you're wearing a mask all day. So another challenge. Another challenge.
I didn't realize that you were back in school already. So that's fascinating. Yeah.
One day.
Right. Well, and I'm sure you're aware of a lot that's happening back here, but I think like all schools canceled.
Schools are closed, for sure.
For this calendar year for us.
This is experimental. If it doesn't work, we'll go back to whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
How about the rest of you? How have you been dealing with the adjustment?
I think for me, the things that hit me first, I don't know about other areas, but in New Orleans, it just happened so quickly. They were really trying to put off closing schools. And then all of a sudden on a Friday where we actually had PD, so we weren't even with our students that day, they said we're closed. And so we just had to kind of scramble to make things work. So the hardest thing for me is a lot of students don't have computers or internet at home. We don't have them for our students. So I think I'm seeing about 20 out of my 150 students regularly. And so that's been the hardest part because I can't, like Sheila said, the connections that we have with kids is the biggest and most important part. And that's what's really lacking. And we're trying to call them and check in and make sure they're doing okay, which is going well, but the actual like lessons are just being put to the side. And I've also found that I am not used to being on a computer for 8 or 12 hours a day. Like I'm never look at my computer. I'm usually just on my feet running around in circles. And it's been a different kind of exhausting to just sit on a computer all day, every day. So.
Wow.
It's true.
Yeah, ours, I had a similar experience to Jana, I guess, in that things happen so quickly. And in our region, we went to school March 13th as a teacher workday, and we're starting to plan on what would happen if we shut down. But in our region of the state, there were no cases. So we all sort of thought we had, a little bit of time to get this ready. And then the governor closed schools that day. So we had kids go home, leave stuff at school. Teachers left stuff at school. And like she said, just the scramble to try to figure out what to do. And so I think, we just didn't have, as teachers, at least enough time to really get a good plan going. So just doing the best that we can. I think the most difficult adjustment is having to spend the majority of your time away from the kids, kind of not knowing what they're doing, not specifically behavior-wise, but just like in a classroom, you can see if a kid is struggling and help pretty quickly. With this, it might be days or a week between contact and you don't know. But I think then the struggle becomes too the hard part of balancing. I want to contact these kids and keep in touch with them. But in the high school level, at our school, they have 8 classes. So trying to keep in mind, like, you know, our 8 teachers calling them every day, wondering what's up. And that can get, you know, the balance between bothering a kid and keeping in touch with them. That's been sort of the one where we just have to let go and hope, and kind of hope the kids are doing what's best, and just be there and support if they need it, is sort of what I've been doing.
I find it incredible that you guys are have been so creative and kind of working on the fly. It's interesting, right? When something happens, routine is a major part of our lives and our professions and everything, and that kind of just threw a wrench in. But what's, I guess, commendable for all of you, and I'm sure when we hear from Patty too, is just how even in the midst of adversity, you guys are still focused on the kids, right? That's your focus. Is you're trying your best to figure out things from resources at home. You have some kids that do have resources, some don't. You know that there's a vast workload, and you want to connect, you want to know what's going on, but they could have 7 other teachers that are just as engaged. So just hearing your perspectives is incredible. Patty, what about you, ma'am?
Yeah, it's been really tough, you know, just as everybody else. You know, we were in school on March 13th, and we were told, you know, we're going to be gone for 2 weeks, and then we'll be back. And then we were told we were not coming back at all. And everyone was like, well, what about my stuff? What about my resources, my papers? And, you know, I work with a really interesting group of children. There's about 150 kids on my particular special ed caseload. And the staff is, you know, they're amazing group of people that I work with. But how do you work with the most challenging students who have the most learning disabilities in school? And not only are they having learning challenges, but they also have a lot of social emotional challenges. And they're completely overwhelmed by having to stare at a screen all day. This is not normal for them. You know, the attention span of a kindergartner is not there at all. And you're trying to get them, it's hard enough in a classroom, and then you're trying to get them to pay attention on the screen when they're looking at their friends. And like Sheila said, they just want to see their friends. So we've had a lot of meltdowns. I've had a lot of meetings with parents, and they're just completely overwhelmed by everything that's going on. How to teach their kids, trying to work themselves, have little kids at home, kids at all different age levels. So it's been a big challenge for us. But you know what? We're rising above it. We're doing our best. We're learning very quickly. Some of us are getting really good at technology. And unlike most of you, most of our kids have connection. The ones that we're not getting through with are kids that are just choosing not to come on, or there might be a language barrier.
I see. You mentioned challenges at home, right? Parents are overwhelmed. I can speak personally for my home. I don't know how she does it, but my wife is really has gone through the struggles, right? And then connectivity issues. The teachers have changed format because the school asked them to change format, so they'll get all this app and this system going, and then all of a sudden, oh, those passwords aren't going to work. We're going to go through here. So it was really, really difficult. And I have you know, young children, ages 5 and 8 tomorrow, and then 17. So in that widespread, I mean, it's tough. So, which brings up a point, because Joe was just mentioning, right? I think everyone now, if they didn't before, is starting to realize things that you all have a tremendous job, and you're not being paid enough and probably appreciated enough. Do you think this is going to change any of that, whether policy-wise or just appreciation-wise from here forward? Feel free to chime in, whoever wants to.
I guess I was thinking that in my situation, since I'm in an international school, we have a very transient population, and many of our children are not able to come back because they're stuck in their home country, or they're stuck somewhere else. So we have this issue with, and not as a homeroom teacher, but as a teacher who deals with a lot of kids, very few percentage could show up. And now that we're one day back in school, some of these kids can't get back, and some of them are are very upset with the fact that they can't see their friends in person, and some of the kids won't be back. Teachers are definitely worried about the attrition rate for next year. Will there be enough children to justify being employed again? Will there be an issue with too many teachers, not enough students? Or will the dynamics change with the school where some of the expat community will no longer be in Saigon and they'll be somewhere else, or they'll go home? We really don't know. So we're all on tenterhooks for next year. And we'll all be stuck here this summer because there are no borders open for anybody to come and go. So children are stressed out, families are stressed out, teachers are all, wondering what's going to be the next step. You just have to take it one day at a time, of course. But it's always in the back of your mind about, will I have a job? Parents not happy with the online platforms that you've been dealing with. A lot of homeroom teachers are definitely overwhelmed because they have a fewer percentage of kids showing up, language barriers, kids and parents not able to do the work. We're very lucky because each child, we have a one-to-one iPad program, basically. So before the campus shut down on a Sunday night, everybody was told to go get your kids' stuff. So that was very fortunate. So we have had kids with connectivity, but sometimes they're sharing the iPad, or sometimes they're sharing the family computer with mom and dad and siblings, So it's definitely challenging, and I don't know how some parents appreciate us, some parents don't. Some parents want their money back. Some parents, I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking for next year, especially. We have about, 5-6 weeks to go. So that will be the litmus test, how things work out.
Oh.
Yeah, I think we're in a pretty similar situation actually in New Orleans, where from what I've heard from students and parents, the current student body seems to have increased their appreciation for the teachers at our school with the amount that we're putting in for them. But New Orleans is 100% charter schools, so we're facing the same enrollment concerns. Normally we would have a lot of tours and visits and just trying to promote our high school as the charter high school to enroll in. And we're trying to figure out how to do that while still focusing on our current student body. And then similarly, we were using Zoom and then we had to stop using Zoom. So we're doing all these changes as we go, which can be super frustrating obviously from the teacher standpoint, but then also at home. But most of the parents have at least said that they're super appreciative even of just the check-ins, if not the academic side. So hopefully the appreciation changes. I tend to not hold out too much hope for a countrywide raise for teachers, but I think the appreciation part is definitely increasing.
Yeah, I find it super fascinating because there's, I've seen a ton of memes in the last few weeks about good Lord, teachers should be paid $1 billion a week, and this is ridiculous. And so I think and it's general for sure, but I would hate to see a world where people think that somehow this may be an alternative or a good idea to just go virtual. Again, when you're, 18 to 22 or working on some upper level education, online makes sense, fits into your lifestyle, work, whatever. But it's so important for these kids to be able to socialize and really, really learn culturally through other people, because I would hope that we would never have a world where this was the norm, to where everyone's having to kind of fend for themselves and your quality of education is based on the quality of your stability within your home, because imagine what that would look like. And so I think, luckily, I don't think something like that would ever happen. At least I hope not. But I'm just fascinated by all of this and how people are perceiving it into because, there's all this talk about this new normal, which everyone's tired of. And so just whatever normal is going to be, what that is. And I think a lot of it is still unknown. And so we can kind of create certain things, but I just hope from an education standpoint, so much can change, but not virtually not showing up to school. So
Yeah,
anyway,
I think one thing a lot of people also aren't taking into consideration is the teachers who are doing all of this, who are parents, kind of like you mentioned, Jesse, within your own home. Like, I know I have 2 coworkers who are both single parents, and I have no idea how they are teaching lessons and reaching kids and trying to get their 3 kids to attend other lessons. And I think that's something that's kind of going under the radar as well, as we think of teachers as just teachers. And I mean, I don't have a child, but there are ones who are doing so much additional work outside of that because of this new normal.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah, I think that's the reality that we're living with. But I think the human connection is so important. We struggle as teachers and administrators and people that work in schools to constantly have that face to face with children, and to make that human connection, because we're competing with the online games and the videos and the cell phones on a constant basis, that we don't want that to be the norm. We want it to be, the art of conversation is so hard for kids. We have groups where we're teaching kids how to have a conversation, how to look. You talk to somebody, you look at their eyes. You position your body toward them, and if we're going to go virtual, then all that stuff's going to go out the window. And just learning how to be a member of society is part of what school is all about. So I would pray that we would especially in the K to 12 realm, not do a whole virtual type thing. I do think that parents appreciate us more. I don't think we'll get paid anymore. Schools are losing money during this time, because all of the money, additional revenue that schools get through lunches and different programs that come into the school, people that use our school system for their own clubs, we're not getting any of that money. So we're actually losing a lot of money during this closure as well. So.
Well, that's difficult. So we're hearing all these perspectives that most people don't even realize. And Jenna, what you just brought up, I think that could be its own show, right? Like moms, teachers doing all the things. And but Patty, I think you're absolutely right. Just the socialization that they're learning in school is so important, and that's kind of like sadly like an indirect effect of going to school, and that's how it's probably measured also. And I imagine with your student population, it's significantly important because they have to learn socialization in a very specific way.
Kids are all about peers. It's their
Right.
whole world is about peers.
Right.
Yeah.
well, and not just that, but there's a safety component too for so many kids, that home is not a great place to be, is a reality for so many. And I really for the last month or so have been, I think about it often anyway, just reflecting on my own life, but understanding how important school was for me to have that break away from just a traumatic or chaotic environment that may be at home. And so, kind of to your point, Jana, and what some of you were talking about, I'm wondering about the mental health of not just the parents but the students. And so we have a pretty good idea in landscape just from your perspectives on how the struggle has been dealing with it. But do you have any stories or situations that you could provide without grave details, but just of anything that has brought you concern, knowing that your kids are or your students are dealing with something difficult outside of school in their home?
I guess from a perspective in Asia is that students have a lot of pressure from their Asian cultural situation to excel, and it's just not enough that they're getting this virtual education. They need to get more. I had a little girl tell me that her mother rips up all of her artwork because art is not important. And she said, but I like to draw. And I said, I think you should draw. It helps you, de-stress. And she said that she's hiding her drawings now. But just the idea that there's a lot of stress at home, parents not taking what I do seriously, and it's not serious enough for their children. They don't take it seriously for that. There's definitely stress at home with parents. We have a lot of safeguarding issues, and we haven't seen those kids. and we don't really know how to get in touch with them. And sometimes you don't even know if they're in the country. So when you see this great absence of students who you usually see in class participating or creating or whatever, and then they're not there, you have no idea. Even to this day, I have no idea how the kids are doing, where they are, and if they're even coming back. But to hear kids who, in fact, I was online with some kids who definitely have some safety issues at home, and I was happy to have them on my Google Meet for longer than the meeting because they chose to stay. And this one kid who's Malaysian, he's stuck in Malaysia. He'd never seen anybody make a tuna sandwich. I was like, well, you can watch me make this tuna sandwich and learn how that. But the homeroom teacher said, oh my gosh, he talked about that a lot afterward on one of our Google Meets. So just, again, connecting with these kids who have safety issues at home or really need that connection with school, with their teachers, the continuity, all of that. So it's so incredibly important. And we have a tough population as well. They have different issues than they might have in the States, but we still have that tough home situation for a lot of them.
I think for us I think our school system has a great job, done a great job of providing support and intervention for kids that have these issues. But in school, it's somebody that's right down the hall. You can, a kid feels stressed that can go and in seconds be there talking to somebody and getting through that situation. And I think we've done a good job of providing resources and phone numbers and hotlines. But even then, that's a lot more effort to ask of the kid. And if it's a parent or something at home that's the stressor, if you're at home, it's hard to even make that call if that person's in the next room. But we, just from personal experience, we immediately started delivering lunches to the kids along the bus routes. And so kind of like Sheila mentioned, you deliver a kid 3 days in a row, come get their lunch, and then you never see them again. And it's hard to know what happened. Are they just getting lunch somewhere else? Did they move? What, to have no idea. So, but I just think the increased effort that these kids now have to go through to get help is just, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Patty.
No, I'm sorry. It's just really difficult. We have a student who has had a couple of different hospitalizations, and we finally got her back to school and, comfortable in school. We started slowly reintroducing her because she's got huge school anxiety and school refusal, got her back to school. And now we're out of school. And now the question is like, what's going to happen now? She likes the fact that she's not in school. So now we have to go back to that hurdle of getting her back to school after being out. Now it's going to be March, April, May, like 4.5, 5 months. So we've got this huge hurdle. And then we have other students who, one student whose father died of COVID, and the school community wasn't there to support him and to be with him. So those are the kids that we worry about that have this anxiety, that are normally seeing our school counselors on a every other day or whatever, and now they're seeing them through a screen, and it's just not the connection, and the anxiety's through the roof, which makes the parents' anxiety through the roof, which just makes it that much more. So
I think all of you have great awareness of the issue, and you guys have probably served as intermediaries through your whole career to make sure the kids feel connected to and loved and supported and can guide them. And Andrew, you said something that's super important to me, and Joe and I recognize, and this is kind of the whole reason of our organization exists, because we recognize that it is a huge challenge for people to get help. And a lot of organizations, they'll have a website, or you mentioned a hotline, but especially for a young person or child to be able to have the courage and just foresight or self-awareness to be like, I'm going to go on this website and call this number today. It's almost an unrealistic ask in some cases. And I can kind of sense how difficult it is for you guys, because you're not there for the kids right now. Each of you, it comes through how much you care. From parents, calling maybe a kid's passion not worthy, to having, a parent that's dying from COVID in the class. And then going from, you used to have that availability of resource to just go down the hall and talk to that person, and now like they got to log onto a screen, and it may or may not be a stranger. And another thing, right, like that the friendships you have with both teachers and students it has to be really eroded right now, I would imagine, or maybe just a yearning for kids.
Yeah, I think for me, what came up, I mean, in New Orleans specifically, we got hit so hard so quickly at the beginning of all this. And luckily, we're on kind of the downward trend now, but things really spiked in New Orleans at the end of March and specifically hit the Black community a disproportionate amount. And that's the majority of the students that we serve. And so I think what a lot of our students are dealing with, there are a lot that have family members impacted by this, but I also have a lot of students whose parents work in the medical field. And so the student is home alone during the day on their own to figure out their schedule, but also in the back of their mind worried about their parent coming home safely and coming home. And I know I have one student who she'll take care of the siblings and then disinfect the entire house once her dad gets home because he works at a hospital all day. And so she finally sent an email. She was working with our school psychologist and kind of worked up the nerve to send an email to all of her teachers saying that she just didn't have the capacity to do the work that we were giving. And I think that's been the biggest challenge outside of not being able to physically be there for kids, is finding that balance of, I'm going to provide you with education and I'm going to provide you with academic material. And also, meanwhile, showing you that I care. And for some students, that has to be accepting the fact that you're actually going to choose not to do the academic material. And she said in her email, like, this is because my mental health is coming first. And I was like, yeah, that, like, as it should. But it's difficult as a like main subject teacher, since I do English, trying to find that balance of like, okay, like, let's get this English work in, but also if you need to prioritize your mental health, definitely do that.
Which is a great point and segue, Jenna. So thank you. But we have a question here that I want to address from Elizabeth Stevens. And I think it's super important because we've talked about the kids and how this is stressing not just them out, but their family members. But let's talk about you, right? Let's talk about how you have been or not have been supported from the school administrators. And is there anything in place for you, or has there been anything in place for you that have helped you navigate these times as well? Not just, again, academically or technology wise, but for your mental health.
I'll say one thing. My school principal's wonderful. Every morning she sends out this great, you've got this email. She WhatsApps us. She sends us texts. Call if you need anything. When I was placed into quarantine, I had to go through the whole camp procedure and COVID testing, et cetera, et cetera. And she was there till, I guess I called her up until 3:00 in the morning, and she was there. So I have a very supportive, caring, concerned administration. Just the idea that we do also have virtual post-day happy hours, just so teachers can talk to each other about their day and about the parents, about what the schoolwork, can we change it? Can we make it better? But I think that having that supportive administration is incredibly important because it helps our mental health. Knowing that somebody is just a phone call or a text away, it's been good. There have not been cases of that though, because I've talked to other teachers and they don't get that support, and they're told work harder, work smarter, get those parents on board, and then they break down. Because I've seen a couple of teachers actually go back to the States and leave their jobs knowing that they can't come back because they just couldn't handle the mental stress.
I couldn't agree with that more, Sheila, like at all. Our organization, what it does and what we preach and the coachings that we give organizations, and we tell them, if it's going to say that mental health matters, but it really has to start with leadership and the organization, the culture that it builds. And it sounds like your leadership and you guys' culture kind of prioritizes that in the way it deals with things. And then you've also seen the opposite end of the spectrum where they don't, and it leads to to people leaving. So thank you for saying that. Anyone else?
Yeah, we've had, we actually had a virtual professional development maybe last week. I'm losing track of time, so it could have been a few weeks ago, but it was on like mental health and taking care of ourselves first. And so that was really useful, and it came directly from our school psychologist, who's just a wonderful human. But after that, our principal has been super mindful of making sure he is checking in on like the teacher needs first. And then same thing with, we're run by a nonprofit since it's charter school, but our nonprofit has sent out like surveys and just kind of, they want to make sure that they are being supportive in the best ways they can. And my school has always, like, not just from now, but has always been very, very open to my principal specifically. Like, anytime I have any concern or issue, I can text him immediately with a question or thought or anything. So I think having that trust already built in before this started helped a lot, because I do trust that if I am having a day that I like really literally just can't do anything today, I know that I could text the people that I'm working with and just let them know, and everyone would be like, yeah, take care of yourself. And so I think that trust was built prior to this happening.
From my side, I think the most helpful thing that our district did was from the beginning understand that this is going to be difficult and trying, and we're doing it on the fly and weird. And I've talked to friends of mine in other places whose schools have sort of tried to keep it going business as usual, rigid schedules. You have to do class at this time. And so I think for what our people did was a little more proactive in trying to de-stress from the get-go and saying, we realize what this is going to be like. We can't continue to do things that we normally do. So let's figure out what's important. How can we really get this done? And I think understanding the burden that was going to be on all of us and trying to lessen that. I mean, the support is still there. We have great support. I know I can call people at any time, but I haven't had to, because I don't feel like I've been too terribly overstressed or overtaxed, just because we've sort of done a good job of understanding this is a new situation and we need to find new solutions instead of sticking to the same old script.
I'm sorry. I imagine that would just make everything worse, right? Like, you got to do the best you can with what you got and just figure it out day by day. And I can imagine that would just be too taxing for anybody to deal with, just making already stressful times more stressed. Thanks, Andrew.
Yeah.
Patty, go ahead.
No, I've felt very supported by my administration and the people that I work with, constantly texting back and forth, venting. I think that's really important, just to keep venting. But even our superintendent, she sends out a weekly missile, just kind of keeping us updated on what's going on. And at the end of it, she's always, you've got this, keep going. We're really proud of you. It was Teacher Appreciation Week this past week, and there were videos sent out to appreciate kids, put things online to appreciate us. All the principals are like, as soon as we're back together, we're gonna treat you well. And so I felt good. We all get our downs, but it's been okay.
Yeah, just listening to some of the things that you shared, though, that it worries me when, like Andrew was sharing with the delivering lunches 3 days and the fourth day they're gone, you never see them again. And we can just kind of move on from those things, but they never really go away. And so as those types of situations continue to compound upon each other, I think, it's like, that's the burden that people start to carry is, the worry and wonder of the what ifs. And we know that's kind of what drives and fuels anxiety, is this untold or unknown story of the future. But our mind, because of the negativity bias, tends to create these like horrific situations. And then we really carry this unnecessary burden around. We have another question here from Toby asking if any kids are actually excelling during the virtual times. If you know anyone.
I have a couple.
And why do you think it is? I'm curious. What's your take on why? Yeah.
The ones that come immediately to mind, one student is a student with autism, and another one has a different specified learning disability. And he essentially, what this has done is allowed those students to work at a pace that they just, it's unlike, I know Andrew mentioned there are some schools where it's like, you must be here at this time. Luckily, our school is not doing that. And so this online platform allows him to work at his own pace. And I'm using Google Classroom, and I do have like office hours that are a video conference and students can come to, but then I also have space on Google Classroom where students can like type questions. And this is a student who would, I think all year has said maybe 5 words to me, and that's like a pretty big win for him. But in this virtual setting, he's asking questions because they're just typed. He's turning in every single essay. He's able to do that at the pace that works for him. And so while I definitely agree with what you said earlier, that this would not ideally be the solution to schools for the long run, it's given me space to think about the students where traditional school actually wasn't the answer for them. And it's really cool to see them, like, because I think I know I was getting down on this digital learning, and I know for other students it is challenging, but there are a few who are just taking it and really running with this autonomy that they got from it. So it's really cool to see for those ones.
Yeah, I do. Just to reiterate, I agree. I saw some children for the first time bloom, and I have 300 students I teach. So I really enjoyed seeing these kids in a different environment and watching them thrive. When, in fact, I asked them, I said, if we are going to go back, how many of you will miss these kinds of interactions? And some of them were really like sad because they're getting attention. They're able to see that the teacher's right there for them and appreciate what they're doing. And those kinds of kids, I think, might fall through the cracks again when we get back to whatever normal is, because they're thriving in this new environment. And it's fascinating because I'll comment with my colleagues about, wow, I haven't seen such enthusiasm, or I haven't seen such work come from a particular child. And they're like, yeah, they're really thriving in this virtual environment.
Yeah, absolutely. The one that I'm thinking of, like, my classes are 30 students each, and in that class, I just don't have the time to sit with him with how long it takes him to produce certain things. And online, I can sit with him and I can comment, and we can just comment back and forth for a week until the essay is done. So it is working in that way for some students.
I was going to say in high school, I don't teach high school, but my colleagues tell me how fresh some of the kids are because they're actually sleeping more. They're able to keep that rhythm, their circadian rhythm, in a different way than they do when they're getting up at the crack of dawn.
Yeah, office hours start at afternoon for me. Yeah. I won't do in the morning for them.
A lot of little kids, they're in their pajamas, and they're so happy that they can be in their pajamas. They don't have to get dressed. Well, sometimes I'm in my pajamas too.
That's awesome. I love how this autonomy, when it's given to you anyway, we've heard about some cases where teachers aren't getting it, but this autonomy has allowed you to kind of explore, the child's human condition and where it can work best. It's also it sounds interesting because you guys are like finding the positive in things, right? There's silver linings. You guys are finding positive perspectives, and you're really thinking about the students, right? And sleep is so important, right? We preach it all the time. It's one of the most easiest things to do for your own mental health is to get the right amount of sleep. So that's wonderful that you guys are all thinking about all the things and finding what ways work best. And in the future, I imagine you'll be able to maybe cater your styles depending on what the student is like or what their needs are. And we have, of course, one of our favorite people, one of our faves, Jennifer McShane, and she's asking, how do you think this will change teaching post-COVID?
Well, hopefully, I think we include certainly space for these kids that are excelling, but also these ideas that we've talked about in terms of autonomy. And I know we want the kids to come in. They like structure a lot of times, but can you structure in choice, student choice? Can you structure in some free time so that they have that autonomy? I think that whenever we do come back, I think any teacher that tries to teach the same way they have for 25 years or so is going to be in trouble, because we're going to have kids now who are 5-6 months of being on their own, doing what they want when they want to. So definitely, as an individual, I know for me, it just won't work to teach the way that we did. We'll have to kind of try to guide back towards what works for us, but building in some choice. And one thing that we always did that I think will work, that I've been doing in my classroom, is sort of, you've got an hour and a half, and here's sort of the things that we need to finish, and allowing some freedoms, particularly for high school kids, to explore and learn time management, but to have some choice, and not everybody has to be on the same problem at the exact same time. So just more of that, I think more flexibility is going to be really, really important for these kids.
One thing I'm also hoping a couple of things I'm hoping will change from it. One is, I know a lot of schools, which I think all three other teachers have already mentioned, having either laptops or tablets or whatever. And so I am hoping that this reality pushes all schools to having one-to-one technology, just in case if anything like this ever happens again. And also even in the classroom, if I can have students working at their own pace in that space. But I'm also thinking of education hopefully being able to focus a lot on soft skills again, meaning executive functioning, time management, writing to-do lists. Like those little things are what I'm really finding students are struggling with. Not as much the fact that they have to write an essay, but the fact that they are on their own, and like Andrew said, a lot can do what they want when they want, and then all of a sudden it's 3 a.m. and they actually hadn't written anything yet because they were in charge of their own time. And so I'm hoping that it's understood that the academics will kind of come as we move through, but that we need to also be promoting intrinsic motivation and time management and just little things that will benefit them outside of an academic arena.
Yeah, which I would argue are life skills, right?
Right.
And so I'm a firm believer, not to take anything away from like formalized education, but the greatest teacher in life is life. And so, so many people go without basic understandings of just how to have a conversation, and that those intrinsic desires and needs of time management and how to navigate a problem. Not everything has to be rigidly structured. And so I think, if anything, that could be something that's coming out of this is, we're expanding their capacity to problem solve and see things a different way.
And if you're never given, sorry, I was just going off what Andrew said, if you're never given autonomy or choice, then when you finally are, that's paralyzing, and you don't know how to make a choice if you've always been told to do certain things in a certain order.
I preach this stuff that, it's all conditioning, and, we're conditioning these kids. And then when they become 18 or 21, we just expect unfairly that they're going to have everything figured out. And it's just the only metric is you graduated high school. And so what do you mean you can't pay your bills and solve your problems and write a resume? And it's like, I wasn't prepared for any of this. So learning those skills is super important. And I think between Tim Cook and Bill Gates, every school age kid could get a computer, right? Or an iPad.
Yeah.
Come on.
They donated like $500,000 to the city of New Orleans. So it's definitely doable at this point.
It's doable. It's doable. All right. So we're getting close to our time, and I'm going to have Jesse wrap us here in a second with you. A final question takeaway. But I just want to say that on the back of Teacher Appreciation Week, I think we could kind of remove the week. I really think that teachers, just like nurses and doctors and first responders, really need to be seen in moments like this. I think this always, as someone who's always looking for a positive in these situations, I think, again, it really has exposed our great need for incredible people like you in education to really shape and mold these kids. So thank you so much for not just joining us today, but for what you do both here and abroad, Sheila.
Thank you.
I can't really follow up with that any better, right? I mean, Joe said it all. I will say that, so many people consider Bedrock consider education to be the bedrock of society. It's one of the ways we measure, the strength and functionality of a society. And I know a lot of people have been watching news, and there's, pundits and experts saying stuff like, there's going to be a continuous effect or a disastrous effect, to the education system or to, the learning of our youth, right, because of this. And I am reminded how hopeful everyone should be because of people like yourselves. So thank you. And I mean, we've seen it. It's almost a global representation now. We're glad that Sheila's here from the other side of the planet. Because what time is it there for you, Sheila?
Almost 2 a.m.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Right. But
I took a nap. Don't worry.
The
You
point,
look great, Sheila.
yeah, you look fantastic. The point is I believe that you guys are a representation of teachers in America. Your passion, your insight, your commitment, your positive outlook on things. So the nation should commend you and all teachers, and anyone having to, work with education of students, parent and teacher alike. When we usually close with this, right? This is what we want. If there's anything that you could leave anyone with, a piece of advice or a thought or a concern or just some comforting thoughts that you want to leave with, we always ask you guys to partake and give a little chunk of wisdom for the audience. So if you guys could please do that for us, and we'll start with Patty.
Kids are amazingly resilient.
Who's gonna use that?
So I think that we've got this covered. We appreciate everything that is being done at home, and we will continue to fight the good fight and be there for the kids and be there for the families.
Thank you. Andrew.
I just think that I think that the teachers, we always work with what we've got, and so I don't think this will be disastrous, because come next year we'll find out where our kids are at, and we'll work them and get them going from there. But just if you're at home with your kids and you feel overwhelmed, just they can learn something. It doesn't necessarily have to be from a classroom or from a book. As Joe said, life's the best teacher. So have them just try to learn something, even if it's about themselves.
That's great advice, Andrew. Thank you. Jana?
Yeah, my thought was pretty similar. I think showing children love is the most important thing right now. We'll figure out the academics later. If they were behind already, we'll still work tirelessly to catch them up. But number one is showing them love, and we'll figure out the education part later. But also for teachers and parents to remember that you can't pour from an empty cup. So taking care of yourself is part of showing students love as well.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so you can't top that. You can't top that. Well, again, flexibility, resilience, all these things that we expect ourselves to handle as teachers or as adults. Cut the kids a break and just go with the flow, roll with the punches, because like everyone said, we're going to catch up academically. This hopefully won't last forever. I mean, like I said, we've been in school for one day, and it feels completely different than it did even before this. So it's I don't know how we're going to handle it, but we still have to show the care and the love and the concern for all the kids who are coming out of something like this, moving into a new realm. But again, just like you all said about caring for ourselves, caring for the children, making sure we, still do our jobs, but maybe with a little bit more affection. I don't know.
That's great.
Yeah.
We thank you. This reminds me why I love doing this show. It's hope for humanity. You guys are great people, and America can't thank you enough. And I hope one day there is a change in pay for you guys. That's coming from me, who has absolutely no authority, but I'm putting it out there. Thank you for your time here. Sheila, get some sleep. Bless all of you. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Be safe.
Be safe.